Seo left his wife because she didn't have a job. Years later, she builds an empire and becomes his biggest competitor. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. The atmosphere in the penthouse was thick, almost claustrophobic. Emma could feel it, the tension growing with each passing second. Yet she stayed silent. She hadn't expected this. Not tonight, not ever. Emma, Charles finally spoke. His voice as cold as the glass in his hand. I've been thinking. Maybe it's time we both take a step back and reconsider what we want from life. Emma's heart sank. What do you mean by that, Charles? He exhaled, avoiding her eyes, glancing instead at the sprawling city skyline, a view they'd once celebrated together. Look at us. I'm out there making things happen every day, leading, innovating, and you're here running around with that little book club of yours, that community volunteering thing. It's not enough. Emma's breath caught. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Years of late nights, endless support, and unwavering loyalty, all brushed aside with a flick of his wrist. The words hit her harder than any physical blow. What happened to supporting each other, Charles? She said, her voice barely a whisper. I thought we were a team. He turned to her, a forced, almost patronizing smile on his face. Emma, you're a wonderful person, but you're not growing. You're not ambitious. The last word dripped with disdain, as though it was the worst of her perceived shortcomings. I need a partner who matches my drive. Emma felt her blood run cold. She wanted to scream, to remind him of the countless nights she had stayed awake, helping him polish business pitches, reading through contracts, supporting him as he built his empire. He had relied on her, perhaps more than he was even aware of. But now, here he was, dismissing her as if she were nothing. Charles, I believed in you before anyone else did. I supported you every step of the way. And now, because I'm not some corporate powerhouse. Her voice grew stronger, hurt giving way to anger. He simply shook his head, a tired look in his eyes. It's over, Emma. You'll find someone who appreciates you. Just as you are. The words were so final, so empty. They filled the silence in the room as he turned and walked away, leaving her with an aching hollowness in her chest. 1 year later, Emma stood in the tiny office space she had rented, gazing out the narrow window that offered a sliver of the city skyline. It wasn't much, but it was hers. The past year had been brutal, emotionally, financially, even physically. Yet here she was, standing taller than she had before. The days had been a mix of scrappy resilience and long hours. She had no corporate experience, but Emma knew people, knew how to connect, to listen, and above all, how to inspire. And that was what her fledgling consulting business needed. A foundation built on relationships, trust, and a quiet but fierce determination. Her first clients came from places she never would have expected. Women she met in coffee shops, small business owners, people struggling to build a dream from the ground up, just like she was. Emma knew what it was like to feel dismissed, underestimated. And in her clients, she found a shared resilience that fueled her drive. It wasn't glamorous. There were days when she second-guessed herself, nights spent reworking budgets, and countless rejections from potential clients who barely glanced at her pitch before saying, "Thanks, but no thanks." But those who did believe in her, those few brave souls, were enough to keep her going. Her office phone buzzed, jolting her back to the present. "Emma, it's Carol from Life Now. She's interested in setting up a meeting." Emma's heart raced. Life Now was a medium-sized health company with a reputation for its employee-focused culture. A meeting with its founder could mean the break she'd been working tirelessly for. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of how far she'd come, how much she'd survived. She was no longer the woman Charles had left behind. As she picked up the phone, a sudden sense of clarity washed over her. The rejection she had endured, the heartbreak, it had forged her into someone stronger, someone who could stand on her own. The conversation was brief but promising. Carol was intrigued, perhaps even excited. And after they hung up, Emma allowed herself a rare moment of pride. In the silence of her small office, she smiled, a spark of something new lighting within her. This was only the beginning. Emma's business continued to grow, And with every new client, her confidence blossomed. The work was challenging, but she relished every second. She was building something from nothing, and the sense of ownership was intoxicating. For the first time, she felt that she was steering her life in the direction she wanted. Meanwhile, Charles had little idea of what his ex-wife was accomplishing. He was busy expanding his empire, hardly noticing that a new name was circulating in the consulting world, a name that was slowly starting to compete with his own. Emma, however, kept an eye on him, not out of bitterness but as a means of understanding her competition. She observed his business moves, noted his company's weaknesses, and, with growing confidence, began crafting a strategy to position herself as a genuine competitor. Every step forward was a testament to the strength she had discovered within herself. She wasn't interested in revenge. She was interested in proving, if only to herself, that she was capable of so much more than anyone had ever given her credit for. Over the next few years, Emma's company, Insight Dynamics, transformed from a modest consultancy into a formidable player in the industry. The rapid growth was exhilarating but exhausting, demanding her full attention late nights and early mornings. Still, every challenge only deepened her sense of purpose, of standing on her own in a way she had never known before. Her clients began to notice her unique approach. Unlike the corporate titans, Emma brought a fresh perspective, focusing on empathy and adaptability. She understood the pulse of the people behind the companies, their motivations, fears, and aspirations. Word of her innovative strategies spread, and soon she was attracting clients from all sectors, from tech startups to established firms eager for a more progressive approach. At a gala one evening, Emma found herself shoulder to shoulder with the city's most influential figures. These were the kind of people she had once only watched from a distance at Charles's business events, never quite feeling she belonged. Now, she wasn't just another face in the crowd. She was the CEO of Insight Dynamics, and people were taking notice. Emma. She turned to see Carol from Life Now, her first major client, with a radiant smile. I wanted to introduce you to David. He's the CEO of Infinity Solutions. They've been looking for someone exactly like you to help with their new expansion project. The words felt surreal. Infinity Solutions was one of the fastest-growing companies in the city and the direct competitor to Charles's company, Sterling Enterprises. She had heard about their expansion plans, and it was clear they were aiming to take a significant slice of the market. Landing them as a client would solidify Insight Dynamics as a true industry player, and Emma could hardly believe the opportunity unfolding before her. David extended his hand, a friendly, knowing smile on his face. I've heard quite a bit about you, Emma. They say you're a visionary, and that's exactly what we need. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and by the end of the night, Emma had secured a preliminary meeting with David to discuss a potential collaboration. As she walked away, she felt the full weight of how far she had come. But beneath the pride was something else, an acknowledgement that this wasn't just about building her company. Somewhere along the way, her growth had become a response to every moment she had been belittled, dismissed, and pushed aside. She was proving, not just to herself but to the entire city, that she was capable of greatness. Months passed, and Emma's partnership with Infinity Solutions flourished. Together, they implemented cutting-edge strategies that garnered attention and admiration across the industry. For Charles, however, this success began to hit a little too close to home. Sterling Enterprises, once untouchable, was now struggling to maintain its hold on the market. Charles's frustration grew as he watched his numbers slip, his clients drift, and his once steadfast investors start to ask questions. Whispers of Emma's name reached him from his own board members, advisors, and even longtime clients. One afternoon, his assistant, Tanya, knocked tentatively on his office door. Charles, we need to talk. I think it's time we address the elephant in the room. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It's Emma, she stammered, the hesitation evident in her voice. Her company, Insight Dynamics. They've become one of our biggest competitors. She's securing deals we used to win effortlessly. It's affecting our bottom line. Charles's disbelief was palpable. Emma, the woman he had left behind, was now a major threat to his empire. The idea seemed absurd, but the proof was in the numbers, and the numbers were undeniable. He couldn't avoid it any longer. His initial shock gave way to anger, then to curiosity. Part of him wondered how she had done it, how the same woman he had once deemed unambitious had managed to claw her way to such a high level of success. And though he would never admit it, he felt an unsettling pang of respect for her, realizing that he had perhaps underestimated her all along. As tensions mounted, Charles decided to confront the situation head-on. He requested a meeting with Emma, framing it as a potential collaboration, though deep down, he was driven by a need to understand her rise, and perhaps in some way to remind her of where she had come from. Emma's first instinct was to decline, but something compelled her to accept. She wanted to look him in the eye, to see the face of the man who had once told her she wasn't enough. She wanted to show him, without a word, that she had not only survived but thrived. When they finally met, the years had aged Charles. His eyes, once sharp with ambition, now held a hint of desperation. Emma, however, was a different woman entirely. She was poised, confident, and exuded a quiet power that took Charles by surprise. "Emma," he began, his tone unusually subdued, "I can't deny what you've accomplished. You've built something impressive." She met his gaze, unflinching. "Thank you, Charles." He cleared his throat, attempting to regain his footing. "I think there's an opportunity for us to work together again, to put the past behind us. Sterling Enterprises and Insight Dynamics could do great things together." Emma almost laughed at the irony. The very man who had dismissed her as unworthy of his ambitions now stood before her, proposing an alliance. She could feel the poetic justice of the moment and couldn't resist savoring it for just a second longer. "Charles," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I appreciate the offer, but I've moved on from being someone's support. I built Insight Dynamics to be more than just a partner to another company. I'm here to lead." The finality in her words struck him, and for the first time, he seemed to realize the full extent of his mistake. He had left a partner, not a dependent, and in doing so, had lost something irreplaceable. As the months unfolded, Emma's company continued to rise, and she remained focused on her vision. But Charles's desperation only grew. Sterling Enterprises was hemorrhaging clients, and his investors were growing increasingly restless. The board had even started discussing a potential buyout, something that would have been unthinkable only a few years prior. Emma, meanwhile, saw an opportunity she couldn't resist. She began quietly acquiring shares of Sterling Enterprises, positioning herself strategically without drawing attention. She had no intention of revenge, but the chance to bring her journey full circle was too poetic to ignore. Finally, the day came. Charles was summoned to an emergency board meeting, where he found Emma seated at the head of the table, a sight that left him speechless. The members around the table wore expressions ranging from surprise to excitement to thinly veiled satisfaction. Emma had, by that point, gained control of the majority shares, making her the new head of Sterling Enterprises. Charles stared at her, disbelief mingling with a sense of dawning recognition. "Emma, how?" She met his gaze, and for the first time in years, there was no anger, no hurt, only a quiet strength that he had never understood. "It wasn't hard, Charles," she said simply. "You taught me everything I needed to know." The board meeting proceeded as usual, but the shift in power was undeniable. Emma's calm authority held the room, and Charles, for the first time, found himself on the outside looking in. He had spent years climbing to the top, only to be ousted by the very person he had once discarded as unworthy. As the meeting concluded, Charles watched as Emma addressed the board with a vision she had for Sterling Enterprises, a vision rooted in growth, collaboration, and a respect for people that he had never quite grasped. It was a vision he realized too late that he had never understood, and that had now cost him everything. In the days that followed, Emma received an overwhelming wave of support from clients, employees, and investors alike. Her takeover became a defining moment in the industry, a story of resilience and redemption that resonated with countless others who had been told they weren't enough. Charles, meanwhile, faded quietly from the public eye, left to reflect on the choices that had led him there. He had thought ambition was about power, about outpacing everyone else. But Emma had shown him and the world that true ambition was something deeper, something he had never fully understood. As Emma stood in her new office, overlooking the same skyline she had once shared with Charles, she felt a profound sense of closure. She hadn't just reclaimed her dignity, she had built a legacy. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.